antimony compared to a book? If a book happen to be given to a man that is unlearned, he knows not what is signified by that writing, or what that scripture intends, for it is hid from his eyes, and he stands amazed as a cow at the sight of a new door. But if unto that unlearned man anyone suggest the explication of the book, and teach him not only the matter contained therein, but also the use of the same, the man no more admires it as an art, but by this means it becomes to him a learned both to read and understand what is written therein. Such a book is antimony to those who know not of the art of reading. Therefore, I faithfully admonish all who desire to be partakers of its utilities, to bend their mind to know and pronounce the letters thereof, that so they may acquire the art of reading that book, and in such a manner that they may be removed from form to form. When he who hath rightfully gained experience shall preside as rector and judge of that which in trial is most worthy, for one is worthy to be preferred before another in the possession of that. Doctors reprehended. But here what comes into my mind, and ought in no wise to be passed over in silence. I think good to mention that at this day many are found who exclaim and rashly pronounce crucifigo against all those who prepare venoms into medicaments by which many mortals perish, or if they escape with life, live miserably. Such are mercury, arsenic, antimony, etc. And this clamor is chiefly made by those who are called doctors of medicine, yet indeed understand not what the difference is between venom and medicine, but are wholly ignorant how venom may be prepared so as to pass into salutary medicament, and instead of its malignity put on a better nature. So it's what we're doing. Our whole movement is about knowing and understanding the difference between venom and medicine, and all this is still true today and has always been true. Venom prepared resists poison. Against these I do in a special manner exclaim and protest. Against these I say, who exhibit poison to men. For mercury, our pigment, antimony, and such like are venoms in their substance, and unless rightly prepared, remain venoms. Yet after a legitimate preparation, all their venomosity is broke, extinguished, and expelled, so that no part of them remains but what is medicine, which resists all internal venoms, although most deeply rooted, and radically destroyed the same. For venom, being in such a manner prepared as it can no longer hurt, resists all poison which is not yet prepared, and so very well prepares and subjugates it. as it is compelled with the same to put off its own venomous nature. And that's what you can see. There's so many parallels in just a lot of snake references in art, antiquity. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and in the hour of our death. Amen. Okay, I just messed up the reading, so just doing a Hail Mary. Deserve it. Deserve to do one. It's about time. Okay. My God, change these times and put an end to this arrogant pride. Overturn those trees, lest they swell up to heaven. Throw down those giants, lest they accumulate all mountains, and defend those who seriously managing their business faithfully serve thee, and that they may be able to stand against these their persecutors. I seriously admonish all those in our monastery bound by the same vows with me, that they would, with myself, night and day pray unto God, that he would so illuminate these enemies of true medicine, as they may execrate their own error and acknowledge the glory of God, and his power insisted in the creatures, and perceive the clearness latent in them by preparation and antimony, which otherwise surrounded and covered all with external impurities, would deeply be concealed and never brought to light. But I trust the Creator of all things will benignly hear our prayers, that if not whilst I and my brethren live, yet after our death, such a conversation of things and men may follow, as that thick and obscure veil may be taken away from the eyes of our enemies, so that they be true and infallible illumination, obtain a clear sight, that they may find their lost grot, which God, the external governor of time and things of his grace and mercy grant. But it is fit that I intend to publish a certain discourse of antimony in all its numbers absolute, shall begin with the name itself. The Arabians, to whom in past this mineral is known, did in their language call it astanat, but the Chaldeans called it stibium. Among the Latins at this day, the name of antimony is used, by which name they first all signified it. We Germans in our language have given it a name, which seems to express a certain property of its nature. For since it is seen to consist of a certain streaked matter, and of it may easily be made glass endued with various colors, which proceed therefrom, we have called it spy's glass, as if we should say streaked glass. From which variety of the name, by a prudent judgment, a singular collection may be made, that antimony was known and greatly esteemed, and its virtue and utility observed and brought into use by Arabians, Chaldeans, Latins, and our Germans. But afterwards, the heresies of various opinions arising, the use was vitiated, and its virtue and glory first obscured, and afterward wholly extinguished, of which there is no reason to doubt, for nothing is more probable than that truth should be suffered damage and shipwreck by the oppression of enemies. For who knows not the malice of the devil, which by reason of our sins and blindness is very often permitted by God? The devil is the perpetual enemy of mankind, who employs all his strength and all his deceits, and omits nothing, which in himself is to prevent the knowledge of the profit of true medicine, and to exterminate its use, knowing well enough that by that means the power and glory of God is obscured, and those sacrifices of the praises of men are impeded, by which they gave thanks to God, because he hath insisted, as it were, the rays of his goodness in the creatures, whence they may obtain health by a natural auxiliary. But since to discourse of the name of antimony, it is not to propose, we will desist from this matter. For all the praise of antimony consists in the preparation thereof, which is made for perfecting the virtues infused in it from nature by the author of nature. Therefore, my discourse shall be of this, handling it and its known virtue, and I will endeavor to make my name immortal. Yet before I come to declare the virtue of antimony, since I above confessed that it is mere venom, I would have you diligently note that venom is able to draw venom itself, because like itself, much sooner and much more than any other thing of another nature. Virtue of unicorn's horn proved. Now let any reader consider and observe it as a thing worthy of note, that the true unicorn's horn, sophisticated by no fallacy, repels all venom from itself, nor can it assume or draw to itself anything of venom, as is manifest by experience. Let a living spider be put in a circle made of unicorn's horn, and let out of this circle it cannot go or pass over the unicorn's horn, for it shuns whatsoever is averse to venom. But if the circle be made of venomous matter, it is not to be doubled, but that the spider will go out of it and pass over that venom like itself. Note this experiment. Make a piece of silver hollow and put it in water that it may float like a boat, and put venom into it. Then hold a piece of true unicorn's horn as nigh to it as you can, but so as you may not touch it. That unicorn's horn, be its spiritual virtue, will drive the silver from it, so that it will flee away like a duck which swimming on water flies, when it perceives the snares of the fowler ready to entangle it. But on the contrary, nature, in a wonderful manner, loves and follows its own like, as appears by this example. Put a piece of pure and fine bread in a dish full of water, so as the bread may swim upon the water. Hold a piece of true unicorn's horn close to it, yet so as it touch it not. And if you leisurely move the unicorn's horn, the little piece of bread will follow it. Nature so much loves its own like, and so much hates what is unlike itself, as this flies and that follows. Let for our doctors consider that venom by a certain magnetic power attracts venom, and those things which are void of venom do in the like manner draw to themselves pure and wanting a venomous quality. All right, well, you heard the man. Get your unicorn's horn and get to work, guys. So we got a lot of Nye you say? No unicorn's horn? Well, I thought you were a true Spagyric. Well, anyhow, let's continue, eh? So, venom taken away two ways. Therefore, venom may be taken away two ways. First, by its contrary, which resists venom, as already is related of the unicorn's horn. Secondly, by like, when venom by a certain magnetic power draws venom to itself. But the venom which must heal venom like itself ought first to be prepared, as its venom may pass into medicine, and by its own attractive virtue assume the other too and expel it with itself. An example of soap, perhaps. Okay. So, yeah, he's saying a clear example of this is soap. That is compounded of oil and other fat ingredient matters, which seem to be and in very deed are more apt to foul than cleanse linen. But because in the boiling of soap, especially by the help of salt, a certain separation and preparation is made, the soap is rendered Okay, so the soap is compounded of oil and other fat ingredient matters, which seem to be, and in very deed are, more apt to foul than cleanse linen. But because in boiling of soap, especially by the help of salt, a certain separation of preparation is made, the soap is rendered most apt to draw to itself and wash out all foulness and filth from linen and other things. So indeed may venom in certain manner by antecedent preparation be accommodated so as to be no more venom, but a medicament. It draws to itself all other poison, casts it out, and restores the man to his pristine purity and health. So do you, I was just curious, when anyone out there, you're taking a shower, do you think about any of this? Do you understand what's happening when you're taking a shower now? Do you understand how easy this is? Why do you feel so much better when you take a shower with soap? Why use soap? Fat, you're drawing it out. It's attracting itself. So there is definitely, this is mind-blowing stuff here, guys. And let's continue. Now, since our discourse hath led us so far, and we have begun to open nature so much, that the true studious of medicine may clearly know what good or evil is latent in nature, what is venom, and what is harmless. Which is a thing hath not as yet been found out by doctors, but by reason of their own supine negligence, and that the truth thereof may be demonstrated and also confirmed, it will not be amiss to produce certain experimental examples which may discover the truth and refute the false opinions of others. Example of an egg. Put an egg, which in the winter is congealed with cold, into very cold water. There let it lie for a due space of time, and the ice will externally adhere to the eggshell, but the cold be extracted from the egg itself and restored to its pristine vigor of entireness. Example of a member benumbed. Again, if any member be benumbed with cold, let not the patient neglect himself, but apply cold snow water round about, so one cold attracts the other, and the member is restored. Example of member inflamed. In the contrary, if anyone have a member inflamed, let him apply to that inflammation and hot matter, as for example, spirit of wine, which is mere fire, or the quintessence of sulfur, and he will in very deed find that heat is attracted by heat in a certain magnetic manner, and like to rejoice in like, and not only to assuage the pain and heat of the inflamed member, but absolutely to restore the same to its pristine strength. Yep, so like is attracting like, and that is huge. Like we've seen, we use it every day, and most people don't even question that concept, or consequently, they're unaware of that concept. But the fat is pulling out toxin, cold pulling out cold, or more like heat attracting heat. Okay, so let's continue here. Example of frog spawn. Yet least this our purpose should not but be fully enough confirmed by examples. I will also add another by way of supplement. Take frog spawn in the month of March, and laying it on a board dry in the sun. When dry, reduce it to powder, and stew of this powder upon wounds made by venomous vipers or serpents. By this means such wounds will be so prepared as they may be perfectly healed by other medicaments applied thereunto, or otherwise if linen cloths be often moistened in frog spawn, and is often dried, and that linen cut into small pieces and applied to wounds, they effect the same as the aforesaid powder will have done. Example of a toad. But that the very foundation of this truth may be more clearly declared, take a venomous toad, dry him in the sun, shut him up in an earth-closed pot, and by burning reduce him to ashes. Then having taken out the ashes and reduced the same to powder, apply of that powder to a wound made by venom. And this poison attracts the other poison and joins it with itself. Why so, I pray? Because by this burning, which is the calcination of the toad, its interior virtue is made manifest, and officious for operating, so that like can attract like, and especially venom to itself. Therefore, firmly persuade yourself that this truth is infallible and immutable, which I have here proposed to you and others by example. If anyone afflicted with the pest do diligently observe this, he will find the truth of those things I have here above mentioned, the astrum of soul, from which all things in their kinds universally arise. Therefore I determine that in the potency of gold, more than all other things, in an operating nature, that is, in its own astrum, whence both itself and all metals and minerals in the beginning received their first nativity and propagation of generation, touching which more may be said. When I shall manifest to you the astrum of soul and commend the same most religiously to your conscience. Okay, guys, sorry I was stumbling there a little. I've been working all day. I wish this was my real job. I can just do this constantly, because I mean, look at the stuff we're learning. It's amazing. It's I'm blown away. So that just means we're taking a break here, okay? I'm going to do better with that, and we're going going to change gears. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. Just got to do a prayer. Get this sequencer in order here. It's it's going crazy. Okay, there we go. So Stribium. Let's take a step back here. So Stribium, Antimony. They use those interchangeably. So that's they're basically saying it's the same thing, or not they, but our good pal Valentin. And the availability of these materials can lead one to understand how much things have changed. And not to be funny, because I don't want to mock any of this stuff. This is serious for me. And unicorn horns. So everything in this has been literal. Why would they use an allegory for that? So I'm going to do more research on these things, and that's what this channel is going to be about. So, like I said, we're reading Triumphal Chariot of Antimony by Valentine. I keep using those interchangeably too. But, Antimony. To me, we're learning so much. I kind of wanted to read the other book we were on. So let's do reading from there, shall we? Okay, so this is Emmanuel Swedenborg. In the mid-1940s, my grandmother died. Oh, poor Emmanuel, that's too bad, buddy. Okay, briefly, she was giving birth to my Aunt Rita. And due to complications during the pregnancy, her heart stopped, but they thought they had lost her. While the doctors were frantically trying to revive her, my grandmother was having an adventure completely unseen to those standing over her body in the delivery room. According to her, she was transported to a lush green pasture through which a swift stream wound its way. There was a white bridge spanning the stream, and standing on the bridge were many people my grandmother knew and loved. Her own grandmother was there, and many others whom she recognized that had passed on. But the most wonderful part of the experience was that she was met on this side of the river by Jesus himself. He told her not to be afraid, that everything was going to be all right. He also told her that it was not her time yet, and that she must return and raise her children. My grandmother did not want to leave Jesus' side. She longed to cross the bridge and enter into her heavenly reward, but she also came to know that it would be not permitted. And resigned to returning to earth, she agreed and came back. Ever since this experience, my grandmother has been absolutely certain of her eternal reward, talks about Jesus in heaven incessantly, and sings hymns night and day. She is most insufferable. Ouch. She sounds cool to me. But her certain hope in her Lord is also as inviolable to me as it is strong. I wish I had half the faith she does. Perhaps if I had died, met God, and returned, I would not be such an agnostic. Perhaps the same is true of you. Her experience is not unusual, of course. Thousands of people have had what we now call near-death experiences, and amazingly, they are startlingly similar in detail. The problem is that people do not get very far in their journeys to the other side before being told to return. I know of only one person who explored the worlds beyond in much greater detail, Emmanuel Swedenborg. Born on January 29th, 1688 in Stockholm, Sweden, the young Swedenborg was raised in a loving and pious home. His father was a seminary professor who entreated young Emmanuel constantly to love and serve God. His mother unfortunately died when he was only 8 years old, but not before she had given birth to 6 young siblings. His father was later consecrated a Lutheran bishop who served as private chaplain to the Swedish royal family. He was then granted nobility, and so their name was changed from Swedenborg to Swedenborg. And for the rest of his life, young Swedenborg would move in the highest social circles in the land. From Berg to Borg, that's all it takes to get to the highest social circles? Oh, okay. If it were only that simple, huh? Okay. A voracious student, Swedenborg studied philosophy and mastered English, Dutch, French, and Italian, as well as Greek, Hebrew, and Latin, all before he was 20 years old. To relax, he wrote poetry in Latin and learned the organ well enough to substitute at church when the regular organist was away. At 22 years of age, he traveled to England, where he studied physics, astronomy, and other natural sciences. He also mastered several practical crafts, including watchmaking, bookbinding, cabinet work, engraving, and brass musical instrument construction. From there, he went to Holland, where he added lens grinding to his resume. His later academic studies included cosmology, mathematics, anatomy, physiology, politics, economics, metallurgy, mineralogy, geology, mining, engineering, and chemistry. By the time he was 35, Swedenborg had learned most of what the academic world had to offer and can safely be said to have one of the most highly educated men in the world in his time. Even before his travels ended, at the age of 28, the King of Sweden appointed him to be extraordinary assessor of the Royal College of Mines, a position he took seriously, riding far and wide, inspecting safe and unsafe mines, handling administration, hiring, firing, and arbitrating disputes. Not long after, he took his father's seat in the House of Nobles, where he helped to govern the country for over 50 years. It wouldn't have been terribly remarkable if all this learning and influence bore no fruit. But Swedenborg was indefeatably creative. In royal service, Swedenborg designed dry docks, machinery for working salt springs, an airplane, a submarine, a steam engine, and slow combustion stove. His acumen in antimony far exceeded the accepted dogma of the day, and his writings included the first accurate understanding of the cerebral cortex and the respiratory movement of the brain tissues. In 1713, Charles II asked him to solve a very difficult problem, the king needed to transport 5 warships over 15 miles of dry land as he was at war with the Danes. Swedenborg instantly came up with a design and completed the project in under 7 weeks. According to Colin Wilson, all of this practical work starved the religious side of his nature, and in 1744, this burst out like a torrent. It all started with a dream which featured a roaring wind that picked him up and flung him on his face. In this dream, he started to pray, and then suddenly Jesus was standing in front of him, then had a conversation which ended with Jesus saying cryptically, "Well then, so," and then he woke up. Thereafter, he would lapse frequently into ecstatic trances, during which he said he left his body and traveled to other worlds. He claims to have explored heaven and hell extensively and wrote volume after volume documenting his conversations with angels. Swedenborg's revelations about the next world represent the most comprehensive literature on the next life we possess. It is certainly the most detailed and is definitely the most voluminous. According to Swedenborg, all beings are useful, and this doctrine of usefulness is an important one in his system. Beings are useful not simply on earth, but after their death as well. Those who have died and passed over live much as we do. They dwell in houses, live in familial units, have jobs, go on vacations, and continue to better themselves through education and experience. Furthermore, there is no great judgment. God does not send a soul to heaven or hell. Souls seek their own levels. Whoa, that is heavy, man. And a soul will naturally gravitate towards the place he or she feels most comfortable. If you have seen the Robin Williams movie, What Dreams May Come, have seen a near perfect description of Swedenborgian afterlife. I have not seen that, but that might be a good one to watch this weekend. Swedenborg's revelations were not well received by his contemporaries. Oh, not so surprising. Which probably does not surprise you. Oh, no, it doesn't. For one thing, he rejects the doctrine of Jesus' vicarious atonement on the cross, saying that God does not need atonement since God is neither vindictive nor petty. God in Swedenborg's system is divine goodness, and Jesus is divine wisdom. And since goodness must be approached through wisdom, so do Christians approach God through Jesus. He also propounded a system of correspondences. Like many others of his time, Swedenborg believed the occult doctrine as above, so below, and taught that everything on earth corresponds to a spiritual reality. Not only that, he taught that the human is a map of the universe, and that everything in nature has a correspondence to something pertaining to the human being. This is very Platonic and Hermetic, but Swedenborg's genius was in applying this principle to his readings of Scripture. The Bible should be read on 2 levels, Swedenborg taught: the surface literal meaning and symbolic spiritual meaning. If you are thinking, wow, that sounds remarkably like Origen's system of biblical interpretation, you are quite correct. It's frighteningly similar. Take, for example, the puzzling verses in the book of Revelation describing the 4 horsemen of Apocalypse. The section is difficult to understand, and most people read the horsemen to be symbols of various times of trial to be visited upon humankind at the end of the world. But not so with Swedenborg. In his system, the horse corresponds to human intellect. The 4 horsemen represent the declining influence of human intellect on spiritual matters in the 4 ages of the church's history. The white horse represents the undiluted truth expounded by the apostles at the beginning of the church's history. The red horse, whose rider wielded a sword and took peace from the earth, represents the church's will corrupted by passion and hatred, perhaps during the Constantinian era. The black horse represents the complete perversion of the Christian intellect, and the pale horse represents his current culture's complete lack of spiritual understanding. Though many of Swedenborg's correspondences seem arbitrary, a close reading will reveal a remarkably clever and predictable pattern which can be mastered by anyone willing to put the time and effort into pouring through his almost endless stream of writings. For a long time, Swedenborg published his spiritual writings anonymously. But word got out one night when his mystical visions showed him something very frightening he could not master himself. On July 19th, 1759, a great fire broke in Stockholm. Swedenborg was a guest at a dinner party 300 miles away at the time, where he announced with great dismay that a fire had broken out. 2 hours later, he announced with great relief that it had been extinguished just 3 houses before his own. 2 days later, a messenger arrived from Stockholm with news which confirmed every detail of Swedenborg's vision. The cat was out of the bag, and people far and wide soon began to appeal to him for his clairvoyant services. Even the Queen summoned him and asked if he had seen or talked with her brother, the Prince Royal of Prussia, who had passed on not long before. He told her he had not, but said hi for her if he did. The next time Swedenborg appeared at the royal court, he had strode boldly forward and approached Her Majesty. Swedenborg gave her greetings from her brother, and he also passed along her brother's apology for not answering her last letter before he died. He then relayed the contents of a posthumous letter, which he was later under orders from the departed prince to do. The Queen was overwhelmed and wondered aloud. Nobody could possibly have known these things. Amazing as Swedenborg's powers as a medium were, and as insightful as theologian as he was, we cannot accept any of his writings uncritically. Like any sacred text, his writings are a product of his time and couch eternal truth in ephemeral forms. Plus, there were things Swedenborg said which were simply dead wrong, such as his assertion that most of the planets in the solar system are inhabited, that the citizens of the moon speak from their stomachs instead of from their lungs, and therefore their speech sounds like belching, or that Martians have faces which are half black and half tawny, live on fruit, and dress themselves with tree bark. Nonetheless, he had a remarkable influence on many important people. Johnny Appleseed not only spread apple seeds far and wide, but the reason for his travels was that he was a Swedenborgian evangelist and planted more Swedenborgian tracts than he did apple seeds. William Blake was among these followers who first helped to organize Swedenborgian church, something Swedenborg himself never recommended. Perhaps his most famous disciple was Helen Keller, who was a devout Swedenborgian until her death. Her book, My Religion, is still widely read and contains a detailed, if highly hagiographic account of his life. Of course, there was those who hotly opposed the doctrines he taught. He was formally charged with heresy, and the royal court condemned his heresy and banned his books. Swedenborg appealed to the king, and the issue went to the Court of Appeals, where indeed in a hung jury due to a legal stalemate, Swedenborg was left alone to continue his writing and publishing until his death. Not long before he died, Swedenborg invited John Wesley, the founder of the Methodism, to visit him, and we knew Wesley was interested in his writings, and he hoped they could have a fruitful discussion of theology. Wesley was surprised, since he had told no one of his fascination with Swedenborg. He told Swedenborg he would be passing through and would drop in on him in 6 months. Swedenborg wrote back saying that he would be late, as he would be passing into the world of spirits on March 29th, 1772, which is exactly what he did. At 5 o'clock in the afternoon on March 29th, at the ripe old age of 84, he asked his maid what time it was. He was told, then replied, It is good, God bless you," and then made his final journey to the spirit world, this time to stay. Swedenborg's grave now rests in public view in the Cathedral of Uppsala in Sweden, an honor reserved for kings, bishops, and generals. What he left behind is an amazing kaleidoscope of biblical exegeses and spiritual exploration. Many of his original manuscripts still survive because the snuff he was addicted to and used constantly acted as a preservative. 2 churches bear his name. The more fundamentalist of the two is Episcopal in polity and more liberal in congregational. If you have not visited the Swedenborgian church building in San Francisco, I recommend making a point of it, as it is a very beautiful building indeed. And after reading this, I'll be going there, and for those who can't, I'll make a little video. Okay, so what are we to make of his sometimes bizarre visions? Most liberal Swedenborgians view them in a more or less Jungian fashion, Carl Jung, as articulations of timeless archetypes to be interpreted, not taken literally. This is a sensible way to proceed with Swedenborg, and I heartily recommend exploring him further. The Swedenborgian Society is still very active and keeps all of his works in print, in some very nice editions indeed. Swedenborgian study groups meet in every major city, even where there are no Swedenborgian churches, and his ideas continue to influence the intellectual and spiritual life of humankind. Perhaps his greatest gift is that of comfort, for aside from Jesus, he is the only person who has explored the worlds beyond and returned to tell about them. Perhaps much of this information is the product of his very own active imagination, but then again, he has a very good track record, and his descriptions match in almost every detail the witness of those who, like my grandmother, have had near-death experiences. While I was working on this essay, one of my dear friends passed away. And as I was writing, I felt his presence profoundly. I found Swedenborg's descriptions of the next world to be very comforting indeed. If Swedenborg is correct, then my friend is settling into his new place and fixing it up for the time when his beloved bride will once again sleep beside him. I would like to think that my friend is once again gainfully employed, teaching students from his great store of knowledge. I won't know for sure until I cross that white bridge myself, but until then, I will be content to take Swedenborg's word for it. After all, who else has been there? Who else can say but him? Huh? What? Okay, and that was a reading from Light from Light, 7 Christian Mystics, Apocryphal Press, and go to their website, get yourself a free copy. It's a great book. I think Swedenborg is onto something with his allegories, but of course, why would you take everything he says literally? He deals in allegories, and he doesn't seem native to this realm, and that's why I like him. And he seemed Spagyric. He knew that spirits are drawn towards like things. Everything is drawn towards like things. That's something we're understanding. The fact that soap is fat and it draws impurities out, and something we take for granted, along with fermentation, so many things. But we must carry on. It's a race. It's a spiritual warfare, a spiritual battle. So I'm going to close it out here. One last reading for the evening. It's been a beautiful night. Thank you for joining me, warriors of truth and justice. Don't forget to go on over to howtowinIncourt.com. Get yourself all signed up. Tell them Apocryphite44 sent you. And Frederick Graves, the man, the myth, the legend, he wrote this inspiring poem, "In the midst of darkness." Have you ever noticed how light dispels darkness, while darkness can never make light disappear? One cannot throw a switch and turn on the dark. One can turn off the light and allow darkness to fill the spaces left behind. But one cannot command darkness to appear by any act other than removing light. If darkness is threatening our nation, perhaps we need to spend less time trying to pull it out and realize that the only way to dispel the darkness is to work together to lift the lamp of truth higher. If darkness is threatening our nation, it is because someone removed the light. All the problems we are facing result from lack of light. There are too many today cursing the darkness and not enough lifting the lamp. The age of enlightenment was not an age where the darkness was attacked, but an age where the light of reason was sought as a remedy for human misery. It was the thinking of this age that gave birth to America. This was the age that opened the door for women and men to be treated as equals in the sight of law. Indeed, this was the age that gave birth to the very concept of securing liberty by self-rule. The age of enlightenment saw value in using light to dispel the darkness of despotism's deceit. Men and women of courage went beyond merely talking about how things ought to be and began to put positive ideas into effective action. It was an age of positive thinking and effective doing. Today's age is characterized On the one hand, by people oblivious to the threat of globalist imperialism and centralist policies that are eroding our due process rights, and on the other hand, by a host of individuals who seem so mesmerized by the darkness that they can do nothing but point to the problems and complain. This is not fixing what's wrong. It is merely adding to the darkness by refusing to share more light. Only when true patriotic individuals and organizations propose together to do the hard work of teaching the truth of our American heritage of law and reestablishing the principles of justice by which alone liberty can be secured for future generations, are we going to see darkness begin to disappear. This author is not the first to say, one cannot bring light by cursing darkness. Perhaps the reason so few are lifting the lamp today is that they do not know where to find it. They don't know what it is. It's easy to complain about what's wrong, but it requires effort to study the old books to discover the principles that make liberty possible. Perhaps the reason we are threatened by a new age of darkness is that too few know anything about the principles of justice. Too few have any idea what the rule of law is or how it can be used to prevent global imperialism and centralist policies that are eroding our due process rights. Indeed, only a few have any idea what due process really is. Many claim to defend the Constitution when in fact they haven't a clue how to interpret that important document and know even less about the maxims of law upon which it was built. Why are we abandoning the principles of our legal heritage? Are we wise to do so? Is it because all good men don't know what those principles really are? If that's the case, then it is certainly time we lifted the lamp higher. Okay, there we go, Frederick Graves. Hopefully some of this may inspire you to be more than you imagine possible. Hopefully you can reach higher for the best thing that you can be, and you rise far above what others may call good enough. So if you enjoyed it, email this guy. Go to lawbook@jurisdictionary.com, send an email. He's a great guy. Just, howtowinincourt.com. Do something. Don't just complain. Oh, they took this. No one helped me. No one gave me this. No one did that. What did you do? Okay? So I'm not trying to get on anyone's case. I just want to lift you up and help you as a brother of light and a brother of wisdom. And if that's not you, you're going to be attracted to the darkness and ignorance anyway. So I'm not going to waste my time with people like that because what's the point? But if you're a solar soldier, stick together here. Let's create an inferno. Okay, and let's rise up far beyond what others call good enough. Let's be holy. Let's start a new order here. Anyhow, I hope you guys enjoyed the readings, the artwork. The sequencer went a little crazy there for a bit. Apologize. It was during from the Light from Light reading. But anyhow, I'm going to stop rambling and work on my next production. Hail Yahweh and peace to you all. Good night.